Hey everyone, and welcome back to Flex Offenders. There are a lot of rappers who did live the hood lives they present to the world, but the following rappers that faked being from the hood haven't been able to fool us. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Flex Offenders. Also, comment fakes, and we'll give a lucky winner a shout out in the next video. 13. Rick Ross. Of course, we had to include Rick Ross at the top of today's countdown because he really has it coming. His tunes feature all sorts of stories about how gangsta he is and how hard he had it growing up. But would a real gangster opt to be a prison guard? Nope. That would amount to selling his people out in the biggest way possible if he did happen to be from the hood. And we're sure he'd have plenty of targets on his back if he did grow up the way he says he did. It took Ross a long time to finally admit to being a big part of the system back in the day, despite the fact that the evidence was hard to refute. We're glad he finally decided to own his fakery, but the fact that it took him so long is still going to bother us for a long time. We'll also never give him the respect he tries to demand because Officer Ricky really screwed up big time by trying to sweep him repping Babylon under the rug. The guy does try to talk a big game, but he never did any of the things he wants us to think he did. In fact, he spent most of his life representing the enemy, and that's why he will never be from the hood, no matter how hard he tries to sell it. 12. Lil Wayne. Called out as one of the fakest hood rappers ever. Lil Wayne has a lot of explaining to do if he wants to keep up appearances. Would a guy from the hood go out of his way to appear on a Ghost Recon ad, tossing out Leroy Jenkins-style shoutouts the way Lil Wayne did? We highly doubt it.
Bang, 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 bitch.
We're not saying that someone from the hood can't be a diehard gamer, but when it gets that hokey, we've really got to question what he thinks he's trying to prove. It's not really worth watching, and it's just sad in so many ways.
DMV took my license. This is the only driving I get to do.
Sure, there are bigger fakers than Wayne, but we really don't think that there are many who try to play as tough as him as often as he does. He raps about doing some pretty terrible things and is quick to try to make himself out to be a blood, but that seems to be all talk and he's got no foundation to base any of his big claims on. He was also an A student, albeit one who did grow up in a pretty rough neighborhood. Say what you will about Lil Wayne, but don't try to come to us talking about how he represents the hood because as far as we're concerned, he really doesn't. 11. Drake. You all knew this one was coming. Drake got his start as an actor on the hit Canadian show Degrassi.
Ah, spin. You really shouldn't have.
And he grew up with a bit of a silver spoon in his mouth. He tries to play like he's hard, but he's about as soft as a rapper can get. Some people say that he's done great things for the city of Toronto, and that's probably true. But we still think he gets a lot more credit than he deserves at the end of the day. No real gangster would be okay with people calling them dizzy. But that's Drake for you. How can you claim to be from the hood when all you've got is making fun of Jay-Z for enjoying fondue from time to time? If that's his idea of trying to start a fight, then we want nothing to do with it. He's also the type of dude to get primo seats at a Raptors game and get caught using a lint roller halfway through a game. When it comes right down to it, Drake may have some alright tunes, but nothing about him is hood in any way, shape, or form. He's all about how he started from the bottom, but really, he started with a serious head start. And that start happened pretty damn close to the top. 10. 6ix9ine. Another rapper who really had no street cred at any point in his career. Tekashi 6ix9ine is one of the saddest excuses for a rapper we've seen since Vanilla Ice. Sure, he may enjoy the lifestyle, but he only got started in the rap game because he thought it made him look cool. That's not the type of talk anyone expects from someone who spent any time in the hood. And that's because he's so far removed from the hood life that it's almost comical to anyone on the outside looking in. Tattoos don't make a rapper, but Daniel Hernandez seems to have missed the point entirely. Plenty of his hairstyles seem to be far more Beyonce than anything else, and that's going easy on the guy. Danny thinks he can claim that he's the king of New York, but he's more like the king of the suburban wannabes. And before anyone brings up the fact that he got booked for some relatively serious offenses, anyone can build up the kind of minor rap sheet that he's currently super proud of. Sure, the guy grew up with a lot less than other rappers. We're looking at you, Drake. But that doesn't mean he's from the hood or anywhere near it. His rainbow hair speaks volumes. He also took a serious shortcut when it came to his fame, with Dan simply falling into his career as a rapper without actually doing much to back it up. Being from the hood takes a lot more than growing up around gang culture, and 6ix9ine still has a long way to go before we're even willing to give him the credit he thinks he's due. 9. 2 Chainz. A college grad, 2 Chainz talks a big game, rapping about booty and bling and being all hard. but he's more of a frat rapper than anything else. We can't knock the fact that he's a serious smart guy, graduating what basically amounted to a 4.0 GPA. That's a serious feat to pull off, but it still shows that he had a leg up right off the bat. If he was really from the hood, he wouldn't have been able to pull that off at all. He also played ball in college, which is pretty legit, but still doesn't make him a gangster in the least. His album, based on a true story, is more akin to Rick Ross trying to make up a story that sounds good and doesn't really have much to back it up. His hometown of College Park, Georgia, isn't a hood in any sense of the word, and it even has a proud historic district, complete with big old fancy houses. There's really nothing hood about it. But that's no surprise given how many rappers are trying to claim that they're hard without having much to back them up these days.
I don't drink tap water.
8. Meek Mill. 50 Cent's been having a lot of fun calling out Meek Mill during their social media feud, and we think he's hit the nail on the head in a big way. Sure, he grew up in North Philly and lived a relatively hard life as a kid, but that doesn't mean he represents a hood lifestyle at all. His mom has even spoken up, saying that he puts on a big show, but that he's really a sweet, quiet kid. She was surprised that he became a rapper and mentioned how he spent most of his childhood at home, playing video games. That makes him sound more like a nerdy college kid from a suburban neighborhood than a gangster who lived his life in the hood. Yes, he sold weed, but being arrested for that isn't saying much. It also seems like the experience scared him straight, and he hasn't shown any signs of being a hardcore criminal or hood kid in the least. He's also hooked up with Rick Ross, with both of them going out of their way from then on to make themselves seem as rough around the edges as possible. If you ask us, it's all for show because he wants to promote a particular image and sell more records. Enough said. 7. Mobb Deep. We assume that this is a name that people weren't expecting to see in this list, but that doesn't make the duo any less soft in the middle. That being said, we're not saying that they didn't take gangster rap to new heights when they did their thing. They really helped the rap game in a big way, and their tunes are still bangers, but that still doesn't make them hood at all. There are even some pretty solid rumors floating around that suggest P had his chain snatched and only got it back because he complained to Nas, who then took matters into his own hands. He really took a hit on that one. Spitting game is one thing, but living the life is another thing entirely. And Mobb Deep didn't grow up as hood as they'd like us to all believe. 6. Azealia Banks. 212 was a real anthem, and for a little while, Azealia Banks looked like the real deal. Then she ran her mouth a few times too many and ended up ruining everyone's first impressions. She even had some choice words to say about T.I.'s wife because she's a sucker for punishment, it seems. T.I. hit back without missing a beat, and instead of standing tall like a real gangster, Miss Banks went straight to her lawyers to try to toss a lawsuit at him, complete with a massive amount of whiny tweets. That's not something that anyone from the hood would do, and it just makes her look more and more like a wannabe with nothing of substance to back up her claim of being from a hood. The more we see of Azealia, the more we realize that she's nothing more than a spoiled kid with a bad attitude. 5. Soulja Boy. After taking a bit of a break, Soulja Boy is back at it, trying to make a comeback any way that he can. His music is getting stranger the longer he stays in the rap game, and he's even tried to hawk Soulja Boy branded tablets, among other seriously whack products. He's even been called out by plenty of OGs at one point or another, with the real gangsters being more than ready to call him out as a fraud who merely tries to spit a good game. He's also tried to make people think he's a blood, but he's never had any type of affiliation with the group, and plenty of Bloods aren't happy about him trying to use their name to increase his celebritydom.
You ain't from the hood, none. You ain't came to the hood, none.
When all's said and done, we can't knock some of his music, but a dude from the hood, he certainly isn't. 4. Birdman. Birdman's less of an issue for us than most rappers on this list, but his nickname of Baby doesn't really suggest that he's got much to back up the idea that he's from the hood at all. He also rolls with a crew that's made a name for themselves as a bunch of fakes, which doesn't really help his cause. His dad owned a bar in New Orleans and spent a lot of time there in his youth. He then moved to British Columbia, Canada. We don't know about you, but we don't really see much sense in claiming that there's a hood culture in BC, which is pretty whitewashed to say the least. He did come out with a few anthems as part of Big Timers, but from where we're sitting, his status as a gangster comes down to people simply believing the hype he tried to build up. At the end of the day, we're still not buying all of his big talk. 3. Wiz Khalifa. When your entire persona revolves around rapping about smoking weed and partying with college kids, it's clear that you're not actually from the hood. Wiz Khalifa has gotten tight with some big names in the rap game since he made it to the big time, but that doesn't take away from the fact that he also paired up to release a track with Miley Cyrus, of all people. That just screams fake as far as we're concerned. He's really nothing more than a pop star pretending to be a rapper, and that's okay by us as long as he doesn't try to claim that he's actually a gangster at all. His style is definitely unique, but he still puts out more of a college frat rap vibe that seems straight out of suburbia rather than straight out of Compton. 2. Kid Ink. We said it before when we mentioned 6ix9ine, and we'll say it here again. Neck tattoos don't actually give anyone any street cred. In fact, when it comes to Kid Ink, it just makes him look like an even bigger poser. He's got a lot of smooth R&B soul in it, but that's not the look he's trying to pull off these days. His songs are all about happy relationships, which means that he's not really trying to front to the extent that some other rappers are, which is the silver lining here. When you release a track titled Sunset, however, you definitely out yourself as pretty soft. If Kid Ink wants us to think he's from the hood, he's gonna have to try a little harder than that to convince us. 1. Riff Raff. This joke of a rapper has given all rappers a bad name in the books. He even managed to get upstaged at his own show, and he took that hit like a punk. We can't imagine why he thinks featuring cutouts of Katy Perry's face makes him seem interesting. But that's wannabes for you. The guy even went out of his way to get a tattoo of an MTV logo, which isn't a hood move at all. The guy's had some highlights, but most of what we've seen from him is just as weak as he is. When all's said and done, Riff Raff is probably one of the saddest excuses for a rapper we've seen in a long time.